Well, what do you do? Do you work or go to school?
I do. I work in retail, and I am going to be getting my psychology degree in the fall. I'm going to be going back for that.
How old are you?
I'm 18.
Oh my goodness.
Newly 18.
Newly 18?
Yes.
How new?
About a week ago, I turned 18.
About a week. I cannot believe it. Aren't we lucky? So how did you find us?
Through Pornhub. I've seen some of your guys' videos.
What are we here to shoot today?
My very first adult video.
Your very first porn video.
Yes.
This is maybe the most puzzling part of the equation. And it may not be the most salacious. It may not be the most entertaining. It may not be immediately obvious to you why this is worth thinking about seriously. Do you really imagine that sex work is good for the sex worker? One simplistic position is to argue that it's good for anyone and everyone who wants to do it. The diametric opposite is to say it's not good for anyone. It should be completely banned. It's not good for anyone at all. Most of us, certainly the vast majority of people who are willing to click on this video and ponder the problem philosophically, fall into category number 3, the belief or the assumption that it's good for some people but not others. And that's actually the most difficult position to sustain. That's the most difficult position to justify, and it entails the most troubling implications because you are, consciously or unconsciously, dividing humanity into two classes of people. Those for whom this is acceptable and those for whom this is not.
I feel very unhappy and unfulfilled sometimes, even though I am making good amount of money, because I know this is not something I want to do. This is kind of gross, but guys you've been around, they probably want to see you naked. And not all of them, but most of them will pay that extra money without telling you, and they're gonna see. I can't even imagine how many guys that I went to high school with is sub to my OnlyFans, but you know, that's just how it is. And I can live with that, but can you? This OnlyFans thing, people don't want to see pornography. They want to see your pornography. This is a very mentally stressing industry because as much as we want to say our body, our choice, society are still going to judge us upon it. That's why a lot of girls don't want to show their face because they don't want society, people around them, to judge them. It's really hard to talk about it because I'm making a really good amount of money for someone my age and not even doing that much. Like, I don't feel like I've sold my soul yet.
Do you believe Army recruitment is good for the young soldier who is recruited? Wouldn't it be simple to live your life with the belief that, sure, joining the Army is good for anyone and everyone? There's nothing wrong with teams of Army recruiters signing up 18-year-olds doing Army recruitment in high schools. Young people making this decision that's going to change their life forever on the basis of propaganda, on the basis of what may be intentionally misleading recruitment information provided by the recruiters, and on the basis probably of fantasies or dreams they have of what being in the Army is like, that they may have had since childhood, or that they may have gotten from watching movies and TV shows, right? Wouldn't your life be simple if you could believe in position 1 or position 2 here? That it's just good for anyone and everyone, Army recruitment to join the Army, it's good for all teenagers to sign up, or maybe you're some kind of principled anti-military pacifist who thinks this isn't good for anybody, this should be completely abolished, this should be completely illegal. But position 3 is the one that's really difficult to justify yourself, and it has the most troubling implications. It's good for some people and not others. If we really believed that sex work were an unalloyed good, then we would have no trouble at all with the sex industry recruiting students in high schools, setting up a desk just like this Army recruiter here and saying, sign up now to star in pornographic films, sign up now to be a stripper or even a prostitute. There's an article here from an anti-pornography website complaining about sex industry groups setting up precisely this kind of stand at schools, trying to recruit girls who've just turned 18 to become strippers, porn stars, so on and so forth. And I thought it was interesting that even though this website is anti-pornography and anti-sex work, they chose quite a moderate ethical parallel here. They compared this to the credit card industry, setting up booths in high schools and offering teenagers credit cards when teenagers couldn't possibly cope with, couldn't possibly imagine the long-term implications of running up credit card debt. At what age can you really understand the long-term implications of signing up to join the military? At what age can you really understand the long-term implications of signing up to become a porn star, even if that is the currently socially acceptable form? Instagram modeling, OnlyFans modeling, the various shades of gray that the internet has afforded to sex working as an industry. And I want to just briefly press forward to a much more shocking, much more serious, and much more politically important question. Do you think cocaine and heroin should be legalized? I debated this at great length with a libertarian who took the position. It's quite popular here on the internet for people to argue, in terms of just our abstract reasoning on the chalkboard, that society would be a better place if you allowed anyone and everyone to use cocaine and heroin if they chose to. But I pressed on point 3 here. What do you really believe? You believe there are 2 classes of humanity. One class of humanity that's so contemptible that it doesn't matter if they use cocaine and heroin. And one class of humanity that absolutely must remain sober. Do you believe that a police officer should be allowed to use cocaine first thing in the morning before he goes out on the job? Do you believe that an airplane pilot should be allowed to shoot up heroin before, after, or during work? Do you believe that a school teacher should be able to do these drugs on the weekend? Do you believe that a parent who is raising children should be allowed to do these drugs in their own home, in front of their kids, at the dinner table? Or actually, you don't believe any of these things. When you say that cocaine and heroin should be legalized, what you really mean implicitly, what you really believe, what you're refusing to examine, is the assumption that there are some people for whom this is okay. And for those people, for that separate class of humanity and society, this doesn't have negative consequences that we should worry about. And implicitly, when we take the position that sex work is good for the sex worker, that OnlyFans isn't a problem, really implicitly, position 3 entails that there are some people for whom this is okay. And we don't want to admit to ourselves that we're dividing humanity into 2 classes. That for you, it doesn't matter. Oh, but for a young woman who wants to become a police officer, but for a young woman who wants to become a surgeon, a politician, a psychiatrist, for a young woman maybe even who just wants to later be a parent and raise a family, that actually you are creating a subclass of humanity in your mind. And it's not that you believe those people won't suffer the negative consequences of sex work. It's not that you believe the soldier who signs up at 18 won't suffer the consequences of joining the army, or that the drug addict won't suffer the consequences of drug addiction. It's that you think there's one class of humanity for whom those negative consequences don't matter.
I do. I work in retail, and I am going to be getting my psychology degree in the fall. I'm going to be going back for that.
What I'm trying to say again and again is no. Each of us in our way has the responsibilities of a police officer, of a pilot, and of a parent. We all share in being the same class of human beings with the same responsibilities and the same potentials, above all, politically. Sometimes, in ethics, politics, and philosophy, we have to deal with a completely irrelevant consideration that enough people believe to be relevant that it becomes important. It becomes important in talking about the future of our culture and, frankly, the future of legislation that may govern this part of our culture. The irrelevant but important factor I want to talk about now is privacy. There's this catchphrase in the year 2020 that we're living in a post-privacy society. But the reality is, before the internet existed, there was the phone book. And the reality of the phone book is that anyone who knows your name can find out your address and your telephone number. That never was treated as private or concealed information. It never was treated as a crime for someone to share your name, your phone number, or your address. That has not been, up to this point, part of our cultural and legal tradition. And that may change. It may be that these things start to be treated as secret, or that there are new laws that make it a crime to come on the internet and say, hey, I know who that is. I know her name. Because that's all it takes, right? No matter how hard you may work to conceal your name on the internet, all it takes is one of your cousins, one of your neighbors, maybe the bank teller to say, oh yeah, I recognize that girl. I recognize that guy. Here's his name. Now that you have his name, you can find out his phone number. You can find out his address. That's the way it's always been. We don't live in this respect in a post-privacy society. We live in a society that's actually more interested in, more sensitive to these fundamental questions of privacy than ever before because of the internet. And if you look back at the lives of women who appeared in pornography in the 1970s or 1980s, you're quite wrong to think they lived in a world where they could take for granted that nobody knew their name, that nobody knew their address, or that their friends and family members were unaware that they were appearing in pornography. They were able to conceal this part of their lives. All right? The internet has made these sorts of things faster. It's made these sorts of things cheaper. And with the advent of facial recognition software, yes, we have the final step whereby basically nobody, no matter how hard they may try, can conceal their name, can conceal their address, or can conceal the connection between the different profiles they have on the internet. If, for example, you have a professional name and then you have a name you use for your modeling career on the side, those are going to be connected by having your face in common. However, most fundamentally, we have to recognize that in even raising these questions of privacy, we're raising something profoundly irrelevant to the ethical question at hand. What we are asking, in effect, is, what if you could have your cake and eat it too? What if you could star in pornography and make that money and have that fame while remaining completely anonymous, while concealing it from your friends and family, your coworkers, while still having a career as a psychologist or a lawyer or a school teacher or a parent? What if you could have all of the advantages of appearing in pornography without the disadvantages? And that is a fundamentally immoral and irrelevant question. If we were talking about murder, we're not going to talk about the ethics of getting away with it. And it's very obvious that in the 21st century, there is absolutely no way on the internet you can get away, at least not with being a successful porn star or a successful nude model. If we're talking about whether it's right or wrong to take revenge by killing someone, we have to recognize how irrelevant the question is of, yeah, but what if you could conceal it? What if nobody found out? What if you could get away with it? Stereotypically, these questions are asked about women, not men, and they're posed in a way that presumes the women don't have some other career to sacrifice, whether that be a potential career in the future or an actual ongoing career here and now. These stereotypes are challenged by examples like Professor Nicholas Goddard, who in his 60s, with a PhD, with a distinguished career as a university professor, started participating as a performer in pornography. And inevitably, he dealt with the consequences that his co-workers, his friends, his relatives, and of course his students at the university did indeed discover that he had this double life. Why do I say that privacy is a separate and irrelevant issue? It's because I see that it becomes a dangerous distraction in talking about the ethics and even the pragmatic decisions we all have to make as individual people when we talk about pornography. There's a really important court precedent from about 1 year ago involving a company called girlsdoporn.com. What I see in the mainstream press reporting on it is that the journalists sympathize with the perspective of the young women who brought the complaint, in that they felt that they should be able to appear in pornography. They should be able to earn the money, get the fame and acclaim without the notoriety. That they should be able to have their cake and eat it too, that somehow privacy should make it possible to be a psychology major who goes on to become a psychologist while simultaneously and secretly being a porn star. The young woman who started the complaint that ultimately went to court, she's listed as Jane Doe number 1. She was the ringleader reaching out to and organizing the other young women, 22 of them, who were dissatisfied with their experience with this company. She was a law school student. She was planning on becoming a lawyer. And what do you know? It's actually impossible to be a porn star, to have all the advantages of being a porn star or a nude model without having the disadvantages also. Now, this is not the only important ethical issue raised in this court case. On the contrary, I'd be happy to do another YouTube video talking about many other aspects of this court case. There are a lot of profound things to reflect on there. But this is a dangerous distraction from all of those profound and important questions. Because the question you're asking is, well, yeah, but what if you could get away with it? What if you could have all the advantages without the disadvantages? Well, what if we could kill Osama bin Laden without starting a war that would kill thousands or tens of thousands of innocent people? What if we could conquer Syria without having to go billions of dollars into debt? What if we could have war without the negative consequences? Wouldn't it be great then? What if the CIA could acquire secret information without wiretapping anyone, without torturing anyone? The whole realm of ethical and political debate must concern and include those negative consequences. There's absolutely no point in dealing with this hypothetically as if you could have the advantages without the disadvantages, and privacy has become precisely that kind of dangerous distraction from these issues. The video up to this point has only entertained the question of whether or not sex work is good. I think there is a very different discourse we have to engage in when we shift to the question of whether or not it is normal. In the year 2020, the President of the United States is Donald Trump. His current wife is a retired model. Do you think you could go to Google right now and find nude images of Donald Trump's wife? How about his ex-wives? How many of his former wives have nude images of themselves on the internet? This has become normal. Good or bad, we have to, as with the absence of privacy, face up to the profound normalcy that this has taken on in our lives and at all levels of our society. The problem is precisely that people in the top level of our society are able to indulge in these things without dealing with the consequences. A poor and powerless person who is struggling to become a psychiatrist or a medical doctor or a lawyer or even just to get a job on a construction site or as a mechanic, they may really be unable to deal with the consequences of having quite benign rumors about their sex lives on the internet, or a minor sex scandal involving an ex-boyfriend and some unflattering posts on Facebook or YouTube complaining about something sordid in their personal past. A poor and powerless person may be quite ill-prepared to deal with the consequences of the fact that maybe in the year 2020 they briefly opened an OnlyFans and tried to find out how much money they could or couldn't make out of marketing nude images themselves. And we know that it's precisely people like Donald Trump and his wives, who are able to do these things with impunity. I'm interested profoundly in equality under the law both ways. It may sound very strange to ask the question of, can we or should we all live like Donald Trump? But legally, morally, and ethically, I think those are precisely the questions we have to move towards asking. We can't have a society in which there is impunity for some but not others. Either this is a right to be exercised by all or by none at all.